So what we have, who we have right now with us is Mr. Julian Gordon, who's the Vice President, Asia Pacific, Hyperledger, Linux Foundation, APAC. And his presentation is titled as From CBDCs to Digital Assets and Beyond, Global Development in Enterprise Blockchain, and What Does the Future Hold? So that's definitely a buzzword you don't want to miss. Julian, over to you.
Thank you. All right, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Julian Gordon. As just said, I'm the Vice President, Asia Pacific for Hyperledger, the blockchain initiative of the Linux Foundation. And I'm also the Vice President for the Open Source Security Foundation, and we're going to have a panel on that tomorrow. So I'm delighted to be here after such a long time. The last time I tried to come to India was over 2 years ago, and the COVID stopped me. So I'm back. So I'm very glad to be here. And we're going to discuss digital assets and the exciting work that Hyperledger is doing, especially, obviously, here because of FinTech. Let's see if this works. Yes. So before I go into more detail, I'd like to introduce the Hyperledger Foundation. For those who aren't familiar with our organization, Hyperledger, as it says here, is a global cross-industry consortium of communities collaborating and advancing business blockchain technologies. This includes many companies and many developers. India has some of the smartest developers, and many of them are involved in the work that we do in the Linux Foundation. And blockchains are being used in POCs, pilots, and deployments in the bank and financial services globally. We are, the Hyperledger Foundation, is an open source non-for-profit. And we are accelerating the development and adoption of business blockchain technologies. Businesses and governments trust Hyperledger, and we work with most of those in the world, right? Because Hyperledger is hosted by the Linux Foundation, and these are the experts at accelerating open technology development and commercial adoption. From Linux, which you all know, Linux has 70-90% of the world's compute runs on Linux, and this is part of what the Linux Foundation has developed. Kubernetes, we just had a cloud, with nearly all the key infrastructure within the cloud is predominantly our Linux Foundation products under the CNCF, and I can go on and on. Basic Linux Foundation has developed in an open collaborative fashion most of the kind of plumbing software infrastructure on the planet. We are neutral and collaborative, and we are open to everyone who wishes to participate. We produce open source technologies, and we are immune to commercial interests of any single one company. I would say that we produce some of the best in block technology and industry standards, blockchain by business for business. As most of you know, blockchain allows multiple different parties to securely interact with the same universal source of truth. And that has incredible applications across all industries. And I think the financial services, and we work across all industries, is seeing the most kind of benefit in terms of streamlining settlements, improving liquidity, increasing transparency, enabling new products and markets. Particularly, I'm going to talk about CBDCs, digital assets, and NFTs. We believe that open source is essential for the development of blockchain. And actually, most of the, not just Hyperledger Foundation, we're all using open source. From your devices that you have today, that you have on your phone, right, to the data centers that when you click on your device that uses it, to consumer devices, to your car, everything is open source. Well, I say everything, mostly everything. Open source components now comprise 90% of most software applications. It's faster, it's cheaper, and it's the basis for the key infrastructure that you all rely on. For our key infrastructure, for our energy, for every type of industry, open source is now very much a component of. Because it accelerates innovation, multiple companies working together. Because it does not tie you down to any R&D from one specific company. It's collaboration in its truest form. So at Hyperledger, we are all about open source collaboration. The Hyperledger community is 100% open. Anybody can use it. You can participate as an individual yourself, as a company, as a member, as a corporate member. It's open to everybody. Our collaborative development approach ensures the transparency and longevity that is required to bring blockchain forward to commercial adoption. I believe that we're still only at the beginning of this distributed ledger blockchain journey. Everyone is welcome to participate and to contribute. So let's talk a little bit about our vision. Hyperledger's vision was to get the support from the Linux Foundation, which I explained is the organization, the non-profit organization which we're hosted by, which creates open source communities, builds thriving, sustainable ecosystems around our open source, enterprise-grade operations. And by the way, we do have Pacific open source like Finos, financial services open source, which is Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, all the big companies are working collaboratively together in another kind of sister project. And we as a community are delivering. These are the projects that we have. We started in 2015 with a group of JP Morgan, Intel, IBM, some fintechs like Digital Asset came together in 2015 and say we want to create enterprise blockchain. But we don't want to do that as each individual. Let's do that in a collaborative fashion. Now we have these projects. You may not know all these projects, but Hyperledger Fabric is probably the most famous. That's the #1 enterprise blockchain, pretty well used everywhere in government and in financial services. We have Hyperledger Besu, which is an enterprise Ethereum client. So I think many of you would have heard of Quorum. This is contributed by Consensus, and a lot of the DAOs and Web3 technology, they use Besu. We also have Aries and Indy, which is all around identity. And one of the things that we're still missing or having a challenge in the blockchain world, and very key to what financial services is all around identity, KYC, etc. That is the technology. I'm not at a technology conference, so at this point, I'm not going to go any further or delve into the technology, but we have that information. I'm happy to connect you if you want to know more about the individual technologies. We also have a lab, which is open to everybody. And we have many, like Ashgraph, many kind of from permission to permissionless technologies developed in this. This is easy to load. So if you have within your company or organization, you want to do something in a collaborative fashion, you can come and host that at our lab. And the benefit of hosting at our lab is you have connection to the world's developers. And that is key. Because one thing we have a shortage is good developers. And that's something we're also working on in terms of education. Just have a quick look at our members. So these are some of our members, which we have big and small. We have members collaborating and contributing to these projects. We have companies like, if you look on the top list, we have DTCC, which is the backbone of the securities industry in the US. We have JP Morgan, Chase. We have companies from FinTech. We are global. We have members from Europe. We have members from Asia Pacific, including China, Japan, Singapore, South America, and of course, India. So India, as I said, is a very important part of the global developer community. And I'll go into that, what's happening in India, just in a minute. And then we have our associate members. We have the likes of Berkeley, Cambridge University, have all the big tech companies, big universities are also very much involved, as they are very key in the kind of ideation and creating of these ideas. And obviously, training up the next generation of people who are going to help move this blockchain technology forward. We have central banks. The Bank of England is a member. The Monetary Authority of Singapore is also a member. And we have the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston. And the Wall Street Alliance, and actually a new project called the Digital Dollar Project, which is the US consortium helping to pull together the US dollar CBDC. So many varieties of organizations. And now I think maybe most of interest to you is India. So we're very proud of the amazing work that is being done here in India. The Hyperledger Foundation has a vibrant membership and community in India. We have energy, expertise, and innovation. The amount of contribution and collaboration locally and international from India is amazing. We have the first ever India chapter. We set it up because a lot of development happens on the other side of the planet. Sometimes, I'm based in Hong Kong, I've lived in Asia Pacific most of my life. One of our challenges is language in certain countries, but the predominant one is time zone. So I think it's very important for us to have a community here, which can be the bridge and collaborate with the rest of the world. So we set up our first India chapter, and they do events with blockchain stories, tech fest, we do hackathons. Women in blockchain, diversity is very important to us. I said we want to reach out to every community that exists out there. And we have our wonderful members, Wipro, Mindtree, Tech Mahindra, Snapchat, Zeev, who are based here in Delhi, and Infosys. And we've done a lot of work in Kerala as well, around the universities there, and we're open to working with many other universities. So we have a Kerala Blockchain Association and St. Kitts. And I'm just going to call out quickly our two chapter leads, because this is Arun, who is basically a software engineer, a key software engineer in Walmart down in Bangalore, and we have Kamlesh, who is a CTO and they kind of run that with a large group. So if you want to get involved, you can reach out to them, you can reach out to me, reach out on Hyperledger.org. Please do get involved. So now you know a little bit about the Hyperledger Foundation. Let's have a quick look at what our technology is doing for real world business. This is a report from the Forbes magazine, which I think you all know. Every year they do a Blockchain 50 report, and it's basically companies with a revenue over $1 billion, and it shows you the kind of technology that they're working on, right? We have many out of this. I think this year we had 13 companies on the list who are using, at minimum of 13 companies, are using our technology. We can look at some of them. For instance, Maersk, who are running part of the trade lens, and that's all around trade finance. BHP, who are working on a large trade finance network, moving iron ore around the world. That's one of the largest miners, iron ore miners in the world. We have Tech Mahindra, who are the first Indian company on the list, and we hope to see more and more Indian companies recognized here. We have Tencent, Boeing, Allianz, all doing stuff. And this stuff is now becoming, we have blockchain networks, permissioned blockchain networks that have been running for 3-4 years. I think somebody previously mentioned something about China. China Construction Bank has been running an extended letters of credit network for now, I think 3 years. Does about $50 billion worth of letters of extended credit. I can give you examples and examples of gains of like Trade Lens, which is, I think, tracks 4 million containers around the world. Yet again, that's used for finance, trade finance, and FinTech companies. So these are all in production today. So congratulations to our members, and they're generally using the technologies. I said I'm not going into technology today, but happy to do that at any time. So let's now dive into the work done in the area of CBDCs, digital assets, and other blockchain deployments in the finance sector. As central banks around the world explore the uses, the viabilities, and needs for CBDCs, Hyperledger's DLTs are probably at the forefront. We believe we're probably the most used technologies, right? Our DLTs are built, as we said, in the open. That helps. We're trusted. And central banks kind of know that our technology is sustainable because it's open source. It'll grow and grow and grow. Now, I'm going to have a look at some examples of some real-life examples. But first, I'd like to have a look at, and actually, maybe I'll take a step back, because I was listening to the previous talkers who talked about cryptocurrencies, Web.3, all these kind of areas. So when you come into the kind of currency or digital currency, whatever you like to call it, there's three kind of buckets that I see. The first one is cryptocurrencies, right? and I think we know the challenges there, but there's some really interesting stuff in terms from a technologist, in terms of the stuff that's done from DeFi. I think there's very interesting work done in terms of replicating the kind of financial infrastructure. Actually, my background, I work for banks, I work for HSB, I used to develop these kind of trading systems. There is a lot of interesting work doing replicating that, but obviously there's a challenge kind of with regulatory issues. Then we have the stable kind of coins. That, as you know, has had some challenges, another kind of regulatory challenges, but I still think very, very interesting. And actually early on you saw a lot of the central banks saying maybe we should just adopt some of these stable coins, because not all stable coins are equal, right? So there are some good stuff out there. But what I'm looking at is a central bank digital currency. And of course that's the ultimate access to safe money, because it's backed by the central bank. So there's 3 types, and I took this all from the BIS. I'm an avid follower of the Bank of International Settlements. If you don't know who they are, they're the kind of organization that helps the central banks, and they have some amazing papers. If you want to go into this depth, it is a great source of material. There's 3 types. There's a retail CBDC, which generally we see in more developing countries, and there's a lot of debate whether you actually need one. If you've got such great financial infrastructure already today, but I think what it's helping is the unbanked. That is a key for retail CBDC. There's wholesale CBDCs, gently helping the infrastructure, and I'll talk a little bit about what's happened there. Actually, the Bank of Cambodia is a mix between a retail and some wholesale CBDCs. And then what we call a multi-CBDC. So that's what enables 2 different currencies to come together. So that enables, let's say we have Singapore dollar and we have a Thai baht. It enables the 2 CBDCs, the 2 central banks, to come together and help do an atomic swap. So actually swap at that level, rather than going through all the corresponding bank rails and all that. It's the direct from central bank to central bank, and enabling down to the retailer to do that. And that really is, the G20 has a lot of goals, and one of them really is around how we can improve cross-border payments. And then we have, so let's go through the benefits. I said banking the unbanked. It's still a tragedy that many people out there do not have access to banking. It's the most impoverished, the most vulnerable. So this is something that we can do. Obviously, that's also the promise of Web3 and other things. But at some point, I think it's inevitable that we should enable the unbanked to have a better access. The very fact that someone who earns $100 and has to send it remittances back and pays a large fee, right? When you're a very large organization and you pay nothing, I think is, needs to be, helped. And I think that's something that we see from blockchain, whether you say it's CBDCs or other forms. Diversity in payment options. Making cross-borders cheaper. I just mentioned that. Actually, when we were in the MAS, we did the MAS challenge. One thing the chief FinTech officer I think it was a very wise thing he came up with. He has a kind of vision that if you're going to do cross-border payments as a migrant worker, you should never pay more than $1. So that's the kind of challenge. The ability to facilitate fiscal transfers in times of economic problems, like during this pandemic. How do you get money to individuals without going through the banks? Is there an easy way to do that? A CBDC would solve that. And programmable money. So the ability to use money in operations to support conditionality. So in a wholesale between markets, you only move the money when X, Y, and Z happens, when a settlement's part of the settlement process. And to support that conditionality. So that's CBDCs. Now let me look at a few examples. Actually, well, first I'm going to show you the world of CBDCs. 80% of banks, central banks, are saying they're looking at CBDCs, and this is from March, and you can see them all over the world, right? There's a few that are live examples in Nigeria, which runs on Hyperledger Fabric, by the way. We have Cambodia, which is a quasi-CBDC, and I'm going to talk a little bit about what's happening there. We have, a number of different, in Europe, everywhere. Everyone is looking at a CBDC. Most of it's still exploratory, and it's kind of in parallel what's happening in the other parts, the Web3 and everything else. It's very interesting how these kind of ideas, and of course there's a certain amount of nuances on whether central banks want to do it and why they would do it. But this is what's happening today. So now let's look at a deep dive into, I'm going to quickly deep dive into the Infineon Lion Rock. So this is what we call an MCBDC. Remember, multiple CBDCs working together. So that's many central banks working together. And the bridge, they call it the bridge, refers to the bridge of correspondent banks that you would normally have between two different parties settling foreign exchange across countries. And this is a prototype that demonstrates that potential of using digital currencies and DLT for delivering real-time, cheaper, safe border payments and settlements. It uses what I call, again, that word atomic swap. So you take it from one country to another country, you do the atomic swap. You move your currency across. You delete the old one, and you have your new currency. So very, very interesting. It was done, led by the Bank of International Settlements, had the Hong Kong Monetary Authority, the Bank of Thailand, is the central bank there, the People's Bank of China, the Central Bank of UAE, and there's many different. So this is just, I think this is phase 3. They're continually developing and understanding this. I had a chat with somebody earlier, and this is the nirvana. If we can work out how to just move money between currencies through our central banks, that cuts out a lot of that work. Obviously, there are other reasons we may do the other ones. I don't think this is a binary thing, but this will be a great avenue. And what it did, it said it reduced the cost by half. That was their findings. And it was developed in partnership with our Hyperledger. It uses Hyperledger Besu, which I mentioned before. Okay, so I love this project. So go and have a look more if you want. And there's a few other kind of similar ones in Singapore and elsewhere doing a similar kind of testing, right? So I think this is definitely a key project to look at. So this is the National Bank of Cambodia, and they call their project Bakong. And it's the first retail system in the world using blockchain. It was sponsored by the National Bank of Cambodia, the country's central bank, and was co-developed with one of our members, Soramitsu, and they used the Iroa, which is one of our DLTs. It's a private permission blockchain, and it was launched in 2019. Its overall goal was to boost financial inclusion by reaching the unbanked. I said again, unbanked. I think this is a key benefit of CBDCs. And also to promote the use of a national currency instead of the US dollar. Many people in Cambodia, US dollar, that goes to some of the challenges they had politically in the 80s and 90s. And reduce the liquidity and compliance burdens on the payment service providers. So at the moment, payment service providers don't have to have the same requirement as a settlement bank in order to do transfers across. So they have it helps the payment service providers. And that was one of the key things as well. Early start saw 2,000 transactions per second. It improved the twice daily batches that happen between the banks, the clearing banks, from twice daily batches to 5 seconds. And it reached over 200,000 users, and that was in June 2021. Amassed about $500 million worth of transactions. And just an update, Siray Che, who is the National Bank of Cambodia director, did a great podcast. Please go and listen to it. And she kind of covered some of the nuance that's happened there now. Payment service providers are now part of the whole ecosystem. So they've connected the payment services. They have to have digital money on hand and can redistribute it to their users. It creates interoperability. Everyone, whether you're in the farmer, out in the fields, or you're in the city, you can create this interoperability through this Bakong. It has 32 institutions, and about 20 more are now waiting to go to live. So this is just expanding. And it's become easy for people in the rural areas to send money to parties in urban areas, such as their children studying in the cities, or examples you get, or people working in cities to send money back to their families. And it's really, really cheap. easy for them to do. And it's making the progress of reducing the gap between rural and urban areas. It's easier, faster and cheaper, more efficient to send money to each other rather than through third parties, which they'd have to do. Another goal that she mentioned is now I think they're working with the Malaysian Bank Negara and other banks to see whether they can work in a way that migrant workers can get a cheaper way of working, getting money or getting money moved around. I've got, I think, another 5 or so minutes. This is, I won't go into detail, but we have worked with the Hyperledger Foundation, the FinTech Open Source Foundation, and I talked about the Digital Dollar Project. We've come together to create this open community for experimentation. We want to help people working on this together to create a platform where we can collaborate and innovate together. We want to bring global practitioners in that together. So if you're interested, please do join. We also do have an ebook which we launched. Go to hyperledger.org and download it. So we have a lot of detailed links to other information that we have. We're all about sharing. We really want to help accelerate the understanding and the adoption of technology. I'm going to quickly work through a couple of other examples of technology that's been used in the financial services. Bond e-value, I think you can see them out, are one of our members. And I think somebody also mentioned a previous about the problem with bonds. Corporate bonds cost $200,000, $100,000. They are working on the fractionalization of bonds, and it is enabling, and that bonds ultimately are the safest, one of the safest forms of investment, enabling people to get those. So that's them. Mindtree is working on a virtual credit debit card, which seamlessly works between crypto and fiat. It's a plug-in to merchants, so watch that. And we have another one here on PTP. So, and lastly, I think I'd like to, And lastly, I'd like to go back to NFTs, because we really didn't touch. I really talked about CBDCs and some of the banking stuff, but we have a lot of work being done in NFTs. And I must admit, when NFTs became cool, I used to talk about NFTs all the time. It's just a non-fungible token. And everything we just talked about there is a fungible token. It just means that it's unique as a token, and it's not like money, highly, you can use money, any kind of money. Any dollar's a dollar. You don't mind that it's not unique. So this is a US company, IPware, has developed a platform for representing patents as non-fungible or digital assets. So if you could think about it, the example they use, it's like the Rembrandt you found in the attic. Every company has patents, or lots of have patents, and they can't do anything with them. They just sit there in the attic. So this provides an ecosystem to tokenize those patents, allows intellectual property to be treated as a business asset, so securitizing them in a kind of way. Makes patents easy to license, sell, and commercialize. Creates greater transparency, like everything we do in blockchain. If you have an asset, you can see its provenance, you can do instant settlement, you can fractionalize it. That's the beauty of blockchain. And that's what they are doing to patents. So this is another exciting, so some say NFT isn't just about collectibles and some apes and stuff. There are a lot of really interesting work being done around NFTs, and this is just an example. So I'm going to kind of wrap up here, right? So what does the future hold, and how can you get involved? So much is happening in the blockchain technology here at Hyperledger, and a lot of it is happening in the financial services industry. Most banks are using or working with Hyperledger. So how do you get involved? Become a member, join the Hyperledger India chapter, participate in our open communities. We do have what was a capital markets group, which happens once every month, and you can look at our videos. We have discussions around all the kind of topics. It's all open, free, and you can come along and talk about what you want to talk about as well, all completely open. And you can attend our events and webinars. Now, to conclude, Hyperledger is a thriving, community of companies, developers and contributors from all over the world. Many of them who work in the financial services sector and who are in FinTech. And we want more, because it's about scale, we want more companies and contributors, because more minds solving problems is better for everyone, everywhere. Someone solves a problem in Prague, it's good for somebody else. Someone solves a problem in Bangalore and we share that technical problem or work through that POC and share it, it accelerates the whole adoption of technology. So we can use this technology, we can use blockchain in FinTechs, and we can accelerate that. So we want people from different countries and companies, so there are diverse opinions and perspectives. So if you're interested in this and you're curious to get involved, please do. We're here to help. Our goal is to make you and everyone, the FinTech industry, and everyone be more successful with more innovative technologies and better ways of doing things. Thank you.